high energy, had me engaged the entire time.
I think what's great about Kevin's message is that, no matter how naturally talented you are, or no matter how great you can be, you can always keep striving for that next level. And even, if you become complacent, you might not even realize you've done it. But Kevin really helps you realize, that there's so much more that you can do. If you take a step back, really reevaluate what you're doing and what you're not doing, you can take it to the next level.
I loved his message about God's gift to you and your gift back, and he's just so down to earth and just a helpful, wonderful man.
Really, I think you can put him in front of anybody, and you're going to be inspired, you're going to be motivated, you're going to want to go out there, and you're going to want to start, reaching for that next level today.
Hey, thanks so much for joining in to the Leadership is Personal podcast, bringing you real-world solutions to real-world challenges in anywhere from 3 to 10-minute increments. Leadership is personal. Here's the better results.
Why don't we start off? I guess I'll let everyone know, we've had the ability to connect with and interview some amazing leaders this month that just happen to be women. And this week's guest, Ms. Gail Peterson, happens to be a woman leader. Princeton grad, Harvard grad, former leader at General Mills, and now a global leader in marketing over at Ecolab. And so, Gail, how the heck are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Very well.
Good. So what we've done here, Gail, is this month we're talking to women specifically that happen to be in leadership about, some of their past, some of the ways that they've managed to matriculate and grow within their organization, some pearls of wisdom, and, getting some good advice. So I guess I would start off by saying, if you had a room full of women of your younger self, what would you tell them that maybe you didn't get or you didn't hear as you were kind of coming through the ranks, if you will? And frankly, even if they're your peers or your equals, if you will, what might you tell them that maybe they didn't hear as well?
There's two things I think I would share. The first was a piece of advice I got, but I did get it a little later in my career, and man, I wish I would have heard it earlier. And it was that really you and your personality is the only comparative advantage you have. And what was meant by that is, everybody is some combination of strengths, right? I know I'm a strategic thinker, I'm energizing, and I'm an idea builder. Those are my three. And they've been true since day one, right? And I've continued to work on those. And you might think it's a unique combo, but it's not. In any organization or in any zip code, there's many people that have those same combination of skills. The only thing that sets you apart is how you uniquely do them. And so it's really a comment around making sure you bring your authentic self to the office. And I think that's harder when you feel more different, right? You worry a little bit more about fitting in. And not only have I found the more I just am who I am at work, I do better. I enjoy myself more, but it also gives me more energy because it's a lot of energy to edit yourself. And if you ask any CEO of a company, I guarantee you they would rather you be putting that energy to building your business or building your team than trying to edit who you are. So I thought that was great advice. And on the flip side, if you bring yourself to work and it doesn't work out, then it was just more efficient. Right? You were in a place that it was never going to work out, and now you didn't waste your best years trying to fit in. So that was probably, I still go back to that advice, and I still share that advice very frequently because I think it's easy for that to get lost. The second one for me was more of a self-realization. Whenever I was honored to be asked to be on your podcast, but, at first I thought, it's going to be all about work-life balance. Right? Because often that's important for men and women, but often that's a topic for women. And I always struggled with all of the answers I heard around work-life balance. This idea that it's a scale and it's either in one side of the scale or the other side of the scale. And early in my career made me actually wonder if I was going to be able to have a family and work, which you think is crazy. No one should have to have that question, but I definitely did. And it wasn't until I realized, I can make my own rules here. And I don't have a work life and I don't have a life. I just have this one life. And so I'm going to manage it that way. And the analogy I came up with that really works for me is that it's not a scale, life is a juggling act, and it is for everyone, man or woman or child or recent retiree, right? And you have these balls that you're trying to juggle. And it doesn't matter what those balls are. You just need to know how many you have and what they're called. You know, for me, there's my family, my husband, my friends, God, working out, my career. So I've got a number, right? But you just have to know what they are. Yep. And then the second most important thing you need to know is what they're made of. Are they made of glass or are they made of rubber? And one of the biggest realizations I had is that my career is a rubber ball. And so if I drop it, it will bounce back. If I drop my family, it will not. And you just need to be really clear on that.
I'm going to pause you for 1 second, and I want to exclamate that mark, knowing whether balls are glass or whether they are rubber. That is profound. And so how the hell did you get there, right? I mean, that's, wow, talk about pearls of wisdom. Let's pull on that a little bit. Tell me about that.
What I like about this is it's different for every person, right? And it can be different at your different stages in your life. This is a concept I honestly revisit this time of year every year, because as your life changes, different things change. And I'll be honest with you, Kevin, up until now, my health has been a rubber ball, and I am now getting into a certain decade where it is going to turn into a glass ball real fast. And so I got to get out to the gym, right? So it's okay that they change. There are some, I think, that won't ever change, right? And so for me, the exercise is simple. If this completely fell apart, if this part of my life completely fell apart, what would I do? And if what you would do, in my case, would be just cry for days and days and days and days, it's probably a glass ball. If what you would do is brush off your resume and email some people you know, and yep, your ego's a little hurt, but you're going to take that next step forward, then it's probably a rubber ball. That's how I made the determination. And I think the important thing in this is not to say that my analogy works for everybody either. The important thing is you got to find your own analogy, because every life is unique and every situation is unique, and you have to own it. No one's going to tell you how to achieve work-life balance, and it's going to work. You have to find something that works for you.
I'll tell you, I don't believe in work-life balance. I call it work-life integration. Because like you said.
Yeah, I agree.
Wow. Very, very insightful. Very, very profound. So tell me, Gail, I mean, where'd you get it wrong? Is there a time you ever got it, figure it out?
Oh, geez.
You guys heard me mention Princeton grad, Harvard grad, clearly a bright lady here, clearly a bright leader, you know. So I'd like to understand, you know, has there been one of those times where you went, oh, crap, I should have done something differently?
Oh, I have them all the time. I mean, I think people do revisionist history all the time. I make mistakes all the time. It's more about which ones have I made lately. I honestly think if you aren't making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. So the best way, I guess, to go at this to not be as big as that is in areas of my life. In business, the thread of continuity of the mistakes I make tend to be that I have big ideas that are often, not always, but often different from what others around me have. And I kind of go in all the way, right? I'm not great at doing things halfway.
Love it.
Sometimes prudence is a good strength, though. And so
I know that I agree with that one. I guess I agree with you there for career longevity, Gail. But I'll tell you, I often tell people, if you're telling your ideas and there's not one person around the room that says you are batshit crazy, you have not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I agree. But, you know, there are ways to go do big, different things. And sometimes, you know, a phased approach is appropriate. And so I've made mistakes when I haven't done that. On the back end, I've also made mistakes where it's a big idea. We get everybody aligned, we get going. And I perhaps underestimate the oversight on the execution that is needed. Because when you're doing things that are different and that require a lot of change, you need to fuel the team. I mean, change comes from, right, or strategy changes at least come from money, time, passion, and persistence, I always say. And so if any of those aren't there, it's a problem. And, you know, the money and the time are the easy ones to get. Ensuring that there's passion and persistence across the team is harder. And so I've also made mistakes where I myself have let that fizzle in something, or I've let it fizzle on the team. and then it's a great idea on paper, but doesn't come into the world. So, like I said, there's a lot of mistakes that fall into those two categories, but that's kind of the thread. I've also made mistakes in my career development. Mm-hmm. I think we all have. Most often it's when I don't believe in myself, right? Whether it's taking a job that I think might be a little too hard. I don't know why they think I'm ready for that. I'm not ready for that. Or
that's a phenomenon that we see often in the statistics around women. Right. I mean, one of the offerings that I have now is the ability to get real-time leadership. And the first question, via this application is, how are you feeling about your leadership? And it's pretty interesting, right? Because men, and they also ask, sort of your team, how you're doing. And men are, quite frankly, think they're doing better than they actually are statistically. And women are actually doing much better than they think they are doing from a leadership capacity perspective. And so I guess you're not alone in that regard. So then how do you combat that? Where do you find the confidence within yourself when you're beginning to doubt yourself?
That's an excellent question. I think it can be hard. I mean, one of the things that I always try to find are fans, right? It's very good to know who your critics are and who your champions are and your sponsors and all of that. But sometimes you just need fans. And what I mean by that are the people who are biased, and they're biased, but they are biased on your side, right? They think you are the best thing that's ever walked into a boardroom. And sometimes you need them to help pick you up a little bit. I also think I've started to fall back on this idea of, is there something this job or this role needs that I have? Right? Is there a strength that I can lean into? Because I've always found comfort when I rotate or move positions. If I can start from an area or lean into something that is already a strength, I get a little bit more comfortable more quickly. So, those are two of the things I try to do. I've heard those stats over and over. I don't know why they are the way they are. I don't know if it's because it's a numbers thing, if it's a wiring thing, if it's a societal pressure. I don't know.
Quite honestly, I think it's a hell of a lot of acculturation. Even if you go back to when little kids were, little kids, your daughter falls and skins your knee. If your son falls and skins his knee, it used to be big boys don't cry, right? I just think it's an acculturation. I saw it when I led product development where, quite frankly, because of our acculturation, male financial advisors didn't necessarily say, I don't know the answer. Whereas it's statistically shown, women will say, I don't know the answer, but I'll get it for you, which is why I'll never have a male financial advisor. So, I mean, you spread it out across many different industries, across many sorts of data sets. And so, and that's
the other consideration, though, is I think also it probably is acculturation from a young age, but it's also receptivity to today, right? So how is that woman financial advisor treated if she says the answer and it's wrong? How is it looked on her versus on the man?
Yeah.
Right?
I call it
if a woman effect. If a woman's confident, is she overconfident in that word that isn't a nice word to say, right?
That's right.
So, it's probably a lot of different factors that come into play. But when it comes to my mistake, it's a problem because somebody was coming and asking me to do something. So clearly they were showing a vote of confidence in me that I did not have in myself.
Yeah.
And so that's when it's really a mismatch.
That's that acculturation thing. Even as we talk about corporate cultures, right? Quite honestly, I fight the board all the time that I'm on about being pale, male, and stale, right? If you look across industries at senior leadership teams, I don't know, pick them out of LinkedIn if you want or whatever it is you want to do. But oftentimes they are just that, older, white men. I would imagine you've probably been, over your career, the only woman, let alone woman of color, in certain meetings, in certain situations. And so how do you deal with that? Let's say you walk into a room and it is exactly that. It's all older, white. How do you deal with it?
Well, it's funny. When you were saying that, I have a little theme song I play in my head that's one of these things. It's not like the other. And it always it just makes me laugh. And so it kind of, you just get over it and you go in and you do what you're there to do. I actually believe in all of the literature on diversity. I believe it to be true. I think there is real power and value in diversity. And so I flip that frame, right? So if I'm the only person that looks different, because I am Black, I am a woman, I am younger for my level, if I'm the only person that looks different in that room, I start to think, you know what? I am disproportionately advantaged to be the only person that's going to come up with a different solution. And maybe a better solution, right? So I kind of flip the frame a little bit. I also think it's important, though, to make sure, I don't get called tactful ever, or, that people don't know what's on my mind. So I also think it's important to call it out when you got to call it out. And you can do it in different ways. You can do it through humor. Like a number of people on my team know when I walk into certain floors or board meetings, I am singing that theme song. That's my walk-up music, and they know it, and they're texting me and smiling, right? So you can do it that way, or even more directly, because I think it can get lost on people. You get used to what is your everyday, and it can get lost on people that, in fact, not so much about me, but that, in fact, this is the makeup of our company, and how do we feel about that? Yeah. So I think that helps. And in doing that, Kevin, what I found is I find a lot of allies, right? There are a lot of people out there that want change, that want to be open, that are maybe pale, male, and stale, but they don't know how to start those conversations. And so by me making a comment here or there, a lot of times they'll pull me aside later and want to start a conversation. And it could be awkward, but you know what? It's helping them, and it's helping me because I know I'm not really alone in that room.
You know what, Gail? I'll tell you. Last Friday, I talked to a room of CEOs and, sort of held their feet to the fire a little bit, I guess I would say, because, for a CEO of a major company, and these were smaller businesses, but still $50 million in revenue and up, I've said to them, there is very, very little that you can't get done. If you see a business opportunity, you're going to be very resourceful and figure out how to get it done. And so oftentimes I think we allow them the benefit of the doubt that maybe we don't get at times as leaders. But to hear a CEO or a senior leader say, hey, I don't know exactly how to start that conversation, as I said to them, I'd call bullshit on that, because there's very few things that they can't get done if they want to get done. But I understand how those waters can be a little rocky, but I have a hard time, and Gail, I guess we've had enough conversations for you to know that my tact and my style is typically brute force and direct. So I can probably learn a few things from you on how to maybe approach things with humor or maybe a bit more tactfully. But I oftentimes don't want to allow that sort of out, if you will, to say, yeah, I don't know how to ... right? I don't know. How do you always find that there's a bit of trepidation around getting into those waters?
Well, it maybe it's not, I don't know how to start. My experience hasn't been maybe that's the words they use, but I think more what it is I didn't even know that this was a topic where race or gender influenced it or impacted it. It's so outside of my day-to-day. It's not even on my radar. Yeah. Right. So I'm thinking
about diversity of thought, because a lot of times, people think about where's that diversity of thought, not recognizing that thought comes in a package that sometimes stopped at the door before you could even have that diversity of thought conversation.
I agree with you.
Gail, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we have a hard stop, but the one question I want to ask you is, tell me, what do you think is needed in leadership nowadays where there's a bit of a dearth?
I think openness and compassion is what I would say. And the reason I would say those two is the world is moving so fast. Even the corporate structure is a very patriarchal structure where it is assumed and expected. And I can't even imagine the CEO pressure. They have to have all the answers. Yeah. Well, no. The rate of change is coming faster than a company or a corporation's ability to absorb that change. And so I think you're going to need to be open and compassionate to the entire organization so ideas can come up from below, because I do think some of the biggest game-changing thoughts are more and more not going to come from the top, but maybe the middle or the bottom. And compassion for me also goes to the place of, sometimes we use the word patriarchal in a bad sense. I think there are some nice qualities to it as well. And one of those is it provides a place of belonging and a home for people. And I think in today's crazy world where everybody's trying to tear everybody apart, there is a real role for corporations to play in making us come together. It's a place where people don't get to elect who sits next to them. They don't get to tell somebody their values aren't of value. And so I think it is a unique environment where if leaders can be compassionate to the difference, that it really could be healing for everybody.
You know, I couldn't agree with you more. And frankly, I will take that advice as I talked about my being exercising brute force and directness. I think there's a thing called temperament. I think we could all have a bit more compassion and show a bit more dignity to our fellow woman and man. And so with that, I will thank you again for your time. This has been outstanding. I am certain my listeners will enjoy it equally as much as I have. Thank you so much for joining me today, Gail.
If you join us here each and every week, you'll get a tidbit of information and insight that'll help you be the best version of yourself. Come back next week. Be sure to join us on Facebook within the Facebook group. Check us out on Twitter and on Instagram. Kevin D. Wright. Look us up. Check us out. Link to us online. Love to hear from you. Unlike some of the other podcasts, I want to hear directly from you, and I will answer your question. There's no question too tough, so together we can solve it. Stop back and tell a friend. Leadership is personal. Here's the better results.